Okay, again, so welcome to our webinar. We're going to go ahead and jump right in first to some specific information. Let me go back here about Missouri. I skipped my first section here. Okay, so first, in your state, just some quick statistics. There's 141 high schools who use USATestprep, 67 middle schools, and 61 elementary. In Missouri, we always have an annual user meeting. We pick about 10 or so states that we go to every single year to offer a half-day training, and it's usually in the fall. So traditionally it's in October, and the location within the state varies. So last year it was St. Louis, but it might switch around to hit different parts of your state. So that's something that you'd be interested in attending. Be on the lookout for those emails in the fall. We do give a certificate afterwards for professional development since it is a half-day training. So if that's something you're interested in, just be on the lookout for that. And again, Missouri is kind of the state of changes. We know there's been a lot of content changes. Our content team, they do stay up to date with what's going on, especially in a state like Missouri where there is a lot of transition. And our content team, if you ever have concerns or are confused about something, reach out to us, give us a call or send in feedback. They're happy to help answer whatever questions you have or listen to feedback. So if you guys are on the front lines of what's going on. So if there's something that we aren't doing that we need to, let us know. But again, we try and stay on top with what we have access to. We also try to label the different subject areas with the school year to let you know if that's something that's, a future subject that's coming down in a couple years that maybe you're already supposed to be teaching it, even though you're still assessing on the old standards or the new standards. So we try and label as best we can. And if there's a subject that's italicized and grayed out on our system, we call that deprecated, meaning that you can no longer create anything new with it. You can't create new assignments or new benchmarks with it. And we'll log into a sample Missouri count at the end, and I'll show what that looks like there. So again, we know there's a lot of changes, but one of the things that might be helpful to do is to create a custom assessment where you can actually pick and choose exactly what you want. And the best thing for that is our benchmarking tool, because it will allow you to create really different kinds of assessments, either a summative or formative. And we're going to go through the different modes that you can create a benchmark in. The first one is basic, where this will pretty much do a lot of the work for you. You just have to pick the length, and we have small, medium, large, or the full test, the actual test length to choose from. And in the top right corner, you'll have a little items count. So that shows you how many questions would be in that benchmark. But basic mode, you pick the length, and then USATestprep will actually pick out the questions. And all the different strands will be represented according to their weights. So there's a little link in basic mode that says actual test percentages. And if you were to click on that, it gives you a breakdown for all the different strands specifically for your subject area. And that's how the questions will be distributed as closely as possible. So if there's one strand, here in Algebra 1, I can see this kind of teal color. That one and this blue are weighted pretty heavily. So in basic mode, our system is going to choose more questions in those strands to better represent that. So that's basic. Then there's also custom, where you can actually pick specific strands yourself, and you can even drill down to specific expectations. And then it opens up our database to where you can go in and you can find questions according to their DOK level, by their difficulty level. If you're looking for short answer questions instead of multiple choice, you can search for those questions as well. And a couple of tips about custom mode here. You'll have your questions. If you click on it, you can get a preview of it. We also have a little statistics icon that if you hover over it, you can quickly see the DOK level. And then of course, if there's a question that you feel like it really belongs better with a different expectation, or maybe it's just too difficult for that grade level, you can send in feedback to us using the feedback button. That will go directly to someone in our content team about that specific question, and then you will get a follow-up response to let you know when that has been taken care of. And then we also have favorites, which is unique for a benchmark, where you can incorporate questions of your own. You can author your own multiple choice questions or your own free response. So that's a great way that you can, if you already have questions of your own that you like, you can add them here. And once you add a question, they're not saved and shared with all of USA Test Prep. They're only for your own account where you can have access to them. All right, so the next topic we're going to go through is a big one specifically for your state, and it's one of the reasons that we actually developed it is with Missouri in mind. This is something new this school year. If you haven't had a chance to play around with it, it's a tool where you can convert your old benchmarks, because what happens when we deprecate an old test that's no longer being taught in your state is that the downside is you're losing those benchmarks that you've spent time creating, which is a bummer. So we created a way that you can convert those as best as possible within our system. And if you have a benchmark, then you'll have a pink note under it that says outdated standards, click to update. And so you can use that so that you don't have to start over from scratch with those benchmarks. And what happens when you, well, first of all, let's back up. Here's the outdated benchmarks and why this is a problem. You can't assign a benchmark that's technically outdated in our system. You can't edit it. You can still view your results, so we don't take those away. You still have all of your data there. And one tip is that if you are trying to convert an old benchmark, you may want to click on the name of that benchmark, the old one, so that way you have a snapshot of all the strands and expectations that were in there and how many questions in each one. That way, if you're looking to build something pretty similar, you can see how many questions you had for each one. And you can just take a screenshot of that or copy it somewhere and look at that as you click to convert it. And then once you convert it, what's going to happen is any question or performance task or free response that was part of your old benchmark, if it's still within the new standards, it's going to find it and it's going to highlight it in pink to let you know that was an item where it's overlapping between the old version of that subject and the new version. And then it's going to find those for you. But, in a perfect world, it would find everything. But there may be times where not all the questions transferred over from your old standards to the new ones for whatever reason, or the structure of the expectations and the strands might be completely different. So again, it's not a perfect convert tool, but it definitely will help so that you don't lose everything that you had previously done. Again, your question count will probably be affected, but you can always add to it to make your new benchmark as you go through, and look at which questions were found, and then you can kind of fill in the gaps where you need to. And again, we'll log in just a few minutes and look at what that looks like on the live site. Another big thing is your item types. You have to make sure students can give back this information in different ways, selected response, constructed response, and through these technology enhanced items. So we do have all of these. Obviously, we have the selected response, multiple choice, and then for a constructed response, we have free response questions, which you can assign independently as their own practice, or you can add them into a benchmark if you want to. And then for the technology enhanced items, you may know if you've already used the site before that we call those performance tasks. Again, those can be assigned separately or as part of a benchmark. And the key is to look for what type it is, because there may be certain types that Missouri uses more than others. And so the types we have that you all might care about, we have the drag and drop, which would be our classifying. We have ordering, label. There's also timeline, which I didn't add in there. We have matching. We have a type called choose, where students have to select multiple correct answers, and that's a big type. It's being pushed more and more. And we have created more of those this school year. So again, we call those choose if you're looking for those. And then we also have what we call multi, which you might refer to as hotspot. So that's, again, we can't perfectly match that terminology for every single state, so we try and choose ones that make the most sense for everybody, but we might be renaming those depending on teacher feedback. But again, if you're looking for select multiple answers, it's choose, and then hotspot would be what we call multi, and we'll look at examples of those as well. You might be interested in what we currently have in development, and that is evidence-based selected response items. So those are coming in our system. We've already laid the groundwork for those, which was a big task. It's something that you can't notice, but our development team has already gone in and laid the groundwork to being able to select multiple answers on a question, and it's going to look like a multiple choice question. So it wouldn't actually be a performance task, it would be just a regular question type for the student. And our goal is to have those ready by the beginning of next school year. We're also going to develop more types of performance tasks. And then keep in mind that every page that you're on our site, there's a feedback and contact button at the bottom. And so if there's a specific type of performance task or something that you guys need that we don't currently offer, you can let us know, because that will help guide them as they go through and make priorities for what they're developing. So if there's, again, a special type of performance task we don't have that you want, send in feedback now before those decisions are made, and that will help a great deal. But the evidence-based selected response items, those are definitely coming by the beginning of next school year. Okay, the next thing we're going to briefly talk about are the results and remediation on USATestprep, because that's a great way that you can use those results to help guide your instruction and fill in those gaps for students. And really, our benchmarking tool is what's going to give you the most detailed results, because we have the scores by strand, and you can break it down by expectation to see exactly which areas your students are doing well and where they are not. And then you also have what we call the dot rank, which is a color-coded system to identify student strength and weakness areas. And we have this little key here. We have the pink, the orange, and the green to represent those different levels of mastery. So that is really great on a benchmark to get that quick visual. And then you also have buttons that you can assign practice to students in their lowest scoring expectations to quickly create those practice assignments for students in the exact areas where they need it. And that's something that we only have currently with the benchmark. So that's why, again, the benchmark system is really valuable to be able to get this information. And then you also will have an item analysis tab, and you can see question by question how each student did and overall as a class. And then what's really nice, it's hard to see in the screenshot, but you have at the top above the questions, you can sort them by the % correct. You could sort them by DOK level, and you can also sort them by strand or expectation. So if you wanted to go back and look at all the DOK level 1 questions and how your students did, and then the 2 and the 3 questions, you can have them sorted that way. Or you could sort by expectation, and go through all the questions in that one expectation and then go into the next one. So there are several ways that you can play around with the ordering of the questions to help find what you're looking for. And then you can click view for each question to see a breakdown of how each answer choice was selected. And the final thing here is we also have a bunch of daily resources that you can use. If you go to any of these tabs along the very top of your page, you can pull up a video to watch with your class. You can browse through the different performance tasks that we offer, or you could use our bell ringer as a warm-up question. So there's just a lot more there if you have time to go in and play around with it. You'll find that there's a lot there that you can quickly use, even if you don't have access to a computer lab or your students can't all log in to practice that day, you can still expose them to the questions and have them practice just by using it on your screen or your board in your class. And then also on this page, we have a little test info icon that I'll show you. And this is where you can actually track how many questions and how many performance task videos and vocabulary terms we have for your specific content area. We show the item counts over here on the right. And we're always adding to that. But of course, if there's a specific expectation that you feel we need more questions, that feedback button can let us know that kind of thing as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get logged into an actual teacher account for the last 5 minutes or so to point out what some of this looks like here. First, let me jump to this menu right here. If you go to this EOC menu, you'll see it's pretty long because of all the different versions of those tests. And again, we know that can be confusing and frustrating at the same time to try and figure out what to use and what you can't use, what you can. Again, if it's italicized and grayed out, that's deprecated. So if I were to try and create an assignment or a benchmark for English 1 MLS or English 2 Algebra 1 Geometry or Algebra 2, the MLS version, I wouldn't be able to. And so that's where you can convert your benchmarks if you want to the newer versions of those subjects. And then you'll notice, especially for social studies, there's a lot of 2019 to 20 subjects that we already have available. So if you're supposed to be already teaching those standards, you can start using those questions and resources, but we still have the current ones if that's what they're being assessed over. So just, again, we know it's kind of messy, but hopefully having the years in there will help a little bit, and we'll deprecate tests as they become phased out. But in the meantime, you still have access to both in some situations. But if you go to any of these pages here, here's that little test information icon, and if you click on that, it'll give you the item counts over here on the right. All right, so let me go back because I want to show the benchmark conversion tool and how that works exactly. So let me go a couple pages past here, and here I have some benchmarks that have been grayed out, and I have that pink note, outdated standards, click to update. Again, if it has been grayed out, you can't go back and edit. You can't sign it. You can't really do anything. You can view your results, so those are still available. You can also export your results into Excel. And then what I mentioned in the presentation is if you click on the title of the benchmark, it's going to give you a breakdown for how many questions you had, how many questions per DOK level, how many questions per expectation and strand. So you could screenshot that or copy it over and put it somewhere if you're trying to get a pretty close version of that. And then when you click to update, that's going to take you through here, and you'll see it's building the items here. So I can see my benchmark went from 70 questions to 48. So definitely not ideal. I did lose quite a few questions, but I'm not having to start over from zero, which is the main benefit of this. There's a lot of messages here, but basically it's just telling me I'm creating a new benchmark with a new code, and anything that I previously had in the benchmark that I'm converting into the new standards, it's going to find it. Because here I can see the test is the newer one. So it's not the Algebra 1 MLS, it's now going to be the Algebra 1 EOC, the current one. It will add the word converted into the name, but you can take that out and you can rename it however you want. And then when you go to the next step, any questions that it has found are going to be highlighted in pink. So you can see all those questions there. Now, if you have a strand that is empty, as in this one it says choose strand, that means that there was a strand that is no longer on the new test. So if you had some strands change, you might notice that. There's nothing wrong with it there. It's just it no longer exists, but you could go in and add more strands if you need to. And then again, you can collapse these if it's a little bit hard to see it. So here I can see I have 40 questions for this strand. And I can, again, minimize these and see I have 3 from here. And so that will help you see those counts a little bit better. If you look for that number in parentheses, you'll be able to see what you have pretty quickly. And so there's my questions, and I can go back in and fill in, the gaps. So really, if I needed 10 questions, I could go back in and add to it. And then, it will add that number there. The same thing applies to performance task that you had. So if I go here, I didn't have any performance task in that old test, but again, the same thing would be applied. If you had some, it would have them checked and they would be pink, just like the questions. And then also performance task and then free response. It would do the same thing. It would automatically find those if you had them. And then the very last step of a benchmark is where you can go in and preview it. And if everything looks good and you're happy with this one, then you can go ahead and save it. You'll get this message. Yes, I know I'm creating a brand new benchmark, and it has been created under the new standards, and then you can assign it and everything like normal. And if I go back to benchmarks, here's that one I just created. Again, it's now associated with the new test and not the old one. So again, hopefully that's a helpful tool. Again, we know it's not perfect, but it will help that you don't have to completely lose all of your old benchmarks that you had created. All right, so I do want to make sure I have time to answer any questions that anyone may have, because that's the end of the presentation and everything I wanted to go through. Again, I know it's pretty quick, but I am going to email it out afterwards, so that way you can go back and review anything that you need to. I do really appreciate everyone's time this morning, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.